that a Pokemon back here? She's looking at me like me. Apparently not. Sorry, my eyesight's not great. I just saw the ears and stuff, and I was like,
Oh, hey, my Pokemon.
oh, you're cosplaying Pokemon. Okay, got you. I'm talking to you. So what Pokemon are you? Eevee. My Pokemon knowledge is not like confident for me to be like, that's an Eevee, but I was thinking it. Hey, there's the guy right here. There's the man you're seeing Joel Hodgson. Woo! We have an audience and people want questions, so.
Hi, hey y'all. I just rushed in. Let me see. Check on the mic. Check on the mic. Check on the mic. I like this one, but I might want to.
You want to do both? You can do both.
I can work the room. I'll work the room, okay. Once we run out of ideas. All right, let's try it.
All right. We have a lot of people. I figured we just want to start in the questions unless you.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, let's start the questions. But number one, I'd just like to say it's so great to be here in Huntsville. And yeah, please. I haven't done one of these in about 6 years because I got busy doing the MST stuff and for Netflix. And so now that I'm on the other side of that, I'm like looking forward to doing some more of these cons. So I'm really happy to be
Well,
here.
we're glad to have you.
And this con is famous because it's such a good one. So I'm really glad to be here.
We'll start back over here. First question. Well, you know what? I can do this. I can do this.
Hey, Joel.
We can treat it like Oprah. Just walk around.
Sorry about the mic.
That's okay. My mic guy's not here anyway, so hey, look, you get to this one. First question. Is it a good one?
Hey, Joe.
Hey, over there. Hi, what's your name?
My name's Carlo.
Hey, nice to see you, man.
Nice to see you. I'm a big fan of you. I've been watching your show for a while. You're still great.
Oh, cheers. Thanks.
Thanks. Are you still writing the show? And what happened out of Netflix? They screwed you or something?
Wait, I didn't catch that. What did you say?
Are you still writing the show?
Am
And
I still running Mystery Science Theater?
yes.
Well, we're not in production anymore, so nobody's, you know what I mean, running the show. I mean, while we're in production, I was. Is that a good answer?
Not really.
It's not like being good.
We want to see more. So
Oh, well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Yeah, that's really nice. I hope that's that. I don't feel like I answered. Let's try
I mean,
this one.
it was an answer, Joel.
It was. I'm getting there. I'll get warming up. Yeah, let's keep rolling. Yes.
All right. My name is Art.
Dressing up and bringing Grow with you, man.
Yeah.
Cool.
My name is Art, and I have Art here with me. My question is, for example, I thought The Bubble had a really good concept, but obviously completely failed in execution. Are there any other movies that you riffed?
The movie The Bubble?
The movie The Bubble.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I got it, yeah.
I thought it had a great concept. Any other movies that you covered that you thought maybe could have been a really great movie, but just, didn't stick the landing?
Well, I'd like to talk about The Bubble. Have you guys seen The Bubble on Netflix? It's outrageous. Yeah, it's an outrageous, crazy movie. And when we scanned it, there's a long process that goes prior to making MST, which is finding the movies and then clearing the movies, right? You can't do it in reverse because it'd be wildly expensive. You have to be able to start and go, I think it's an okay on this movie, and then you hand it over to the lawyers to then make a deal, right? And of course, Shop Factory, who are my partners in Mystery Science Theater. And so then they go into the arduous process of making the deals, right? And then, so that's kind of the process. But while we were watching, I was sitting there with Cheryl Volpe, who's our operations manager, Matt McGinnis, who was a longtime writer on the show and ended up directing episodes like The Christmas Dragon for us. We were watching The Bubble, and at the end of the day, it was the end of the day, we watched the movie, and I said, yeah, we're not doing that movie. It's too insane. And then I got up in the morning and I said, we're doing that movie. It's too insane. So that's how that happened. Now, to answer your question, which I think is a really complex idea, which is, did I see a bad movie that I thought had a great concept to it? And I think they all do. I mean, they all are aspiring to something great and have this idea, like, you know, other than knocking off Spielberg, which is a lot of the movies we ended up doing, right? Top People, for example, right, was supposed to be a knockoff of E.T. So they all start as good. This is a great question. My answer, they all start out with great ideas, and of course, things go wrong. All right, thank you very much, man.
Hey guys, if we get you, we're gonna line them down here this way, so you're not blocking the view.
Now, of course, Manos Hands of Fate is an exception to that, right?
Wesley, right?
Yes, sir.
Wesley, right. So Manos, the Hands of Fate is an exception. Let's talk about Manos, right? I'm ready. I have a lot to say about it.
I was actually about to say, kind of related to that, has there ever been a movie so bad you were like, no, even I can't say that?
Well, I think The Bubble's a good example where I went to bed saying, no, we're not going to do it. And I woke up saying, I think we're going to do it. So it's, to answer your question again, and I think Manos is a very apt thing for us to talk about. Manos, the way we used to screen movies back in the day when we were at Best Brains in Minneapolis is, and this is so long ago, we get a literal big box of VHSs that our HBO Downtown Productions would clear. And they basically go, and this is what distributors used to do. Distributors like Sandy Frank would do, is they do, you basically, if you had a UHF channel, they'd give you a brace of, like half the movies would be okay movies and the other half would be the stuff we looked for. And it really screwed them up when we said, no, we just want your shitty movies. And they couldn't believe that people could tell, but this was so early on, they were baffled that we understood that some of your movies are crappy. And so that was kind of what was happening. And so HBO Downtown Productions stopped, we hipped them to this, and then they started to negotiate and get these movies. And so we get a big box of VHSs. And then Frank Conniff was the guy who would do the preliminary screen of the movie. And then when he thought it was good enough, or he thought one would have potential, we'd watch it as a group, right? Over lunch, we'd watch it and try to get a vibe for it. And often we were a little bit reckless about it because we would then go and maybe watch 10 or 15 minutes and go, yeah, this looks fine. And that's what happened with Manos. And so I didn't have a real clear idea what we were getting into. And so when we started watching it, it was real troubling in the writing room because I'm looking around going, holy cow, this is a terrible movie. Holy cow, I don't know if we can make this one work. And as a creator of the show and the executive producer of the show, I had an obligation. Should I say, oh, this is a terrible movie and we shouldn't be riffing on it, or should I just try to let it happen? Should I just not say anything and let that roll on? And that's what I opted to do. And it worked in its own strange way, but I think I've been to places where they screen Manos, and it's not really my favorite riff at all. But it's that movie that is so unique, and it's got a quality that I'm going to try to describe for you, my impression of that movie. And what I think happened with that movie was it's unique in that when they made that movie, they had a unique camera that only could, it was a film camera and it had canister that could only record like less than a minute of film at a time and no sound. So the entire movie was shot without what they used to call without sound, because the German audio, all all the audio guys in film were German and they couldn't say with. So nick out sound. And so then they added it later, and it gives it this quality that's very weird, I think, and it has a feeling of dread to it, I feel. Not just that, haha, it's a bad movie, but oh no, there's dread here. So either the filmmaker knows exactly what he's doing, and he's a great filmmaker, or is a complete beautiful accident. That's what I think it is, a complete beautiful accident. Great question. Let's give a round of applause for it.
Thank you, by the way.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions. One is, has there ever been a movie you wanted to riff and could not get the rights to? And the other question is, I have a lot of fun.
Let's do one at a time, because I kind of, it would be really hard for me to be funny in answering two questions. So what's the movie that I would want to riff that I couldn't get the rights to? Happy Feet.
Okay, and my other question is, I actually love and have a fondness for the green slime. So why did you pick that to be like the pilot?
So let me get this straight. So as you know, we did it for the very first round, right? And again, this is the unique structure of how Mystery Science Theater started, because when I got to the idea, it started with a couple of things, right? And basically, it started with this idea that I saw this book called the Turkey Awards, which was written by the Medved brothers. And they did basically the Academy Awards with bad movies, right? So that's where I found out about Bride of the Monster and Plan 9 from Outer Space. And I remember reading that in college and going, why isn't anybody doing anything with these? Why isn't anybody making a show with this stuff? And then later I kind of got to the conceit of, well, I know, I want to riff on these movies, or I want to have these companions watch a movie with you and say stuff. And we're going to have silhouettes at the bottom of the screen, but if you think about it, like three doughy white guys, like sitting in the front, like who's talking? And so that's kind of what informed the idea is I want unique shapes. There could be a guy, but, oh, I know, robots. And then I was thinking of the film Silent Running with Bruce Dern, the Douglas Trumbull movie. And so that's kind of how that all happened. And then later when we started to really get like working on it, we got paid to do it for Comedy Central. That's when all that stuff evolved and we got it going. But back at KTMA, when we did the pilot, I always loved that movie. I always thought it was fantastic and great. And when I was a little kid, I saw the trailer. We think we were going to the Sound of Music or something. I grew up in Port Atkinson, Wisconsin, and we went to see the Sound of Music, and they played the trailer for the Green Slime. It blew my mind. And so that was always a favorite of mine, and I noticed that it was in the library at KTMA. So that's why we plugged it in and did it. And I always felt like that's the movie that got away, because as you know, we had a big problem with Toho when we tried to release the Gamera movies. And they don't, Gamera is a very hugely valuable property, so they didn't like what we were doing. We later were able to do a backdoor kind of deal through a company in England, I think, that had a deal with Toho. So we were able to do the Gamera that we did, but that's a Toho movie, and so they would never do that. There's another Toho movie that I would really love to do, and I have to think about the name of it. Latitude Zero. Latitude Zero with Cesar Romero. It's amazing. It's incredible. But that's one I would put in that category of one that I would have liked to have done. But anyway, so that's the story. They wouldn't let us do it, but I really, really tried, especially when we brought the show back on Netflix, I really tried to get that movie, and that there's no way they'll ever do that.
Well, you probably already know this, but if you ever did get to riff it, the co-writer of the screenplay is Batman's co-creators.
Is Batman's co-creator?
Bill Finger, yeah, who
Oh,
wrote the
wow.
screenplay, and he
That's
co-created Batman.
fascinating. That's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That gets around.
That's a good question. Check it out. We all learned something today.
It's true.
Hey, so I am someone who's kind of involved in the local comedy scene. So what I wanted to ask is, without getting too inside baseball, what's something very practical that you have learned kind of during your time doing comedy in a live perspective? Kind of something that like you just kind of had to learn. You're like, man, if I could have told myself this in the past, I would have.
Yeah, great question. Stand-up's amazing, was an amazing thing in my life, and I started doing it my senior year of college, and I found my day planner from college, and I was shocked at how much time I actually was going into Minneapolis and doing the clubs. Over 200 times that my senior year, I was performing. And I think that the lovely thing about stand-up and this falls under improv too, but just the idea that it's really hard to know how you're funny. It really is. It takes a lot of self-knowledge, and it takes a lot. Like some people are just gifted that way. They understand how they're funny, and I think getting in front of people and seeing how they react to things you do, it shaped me really quickly as far as how I could be funny in that context. And my stand-up is a bit different, but there are things that cross over a lot. All the invention exchanges came from my stand-up, and all that started that way. But with Mystery Science Theater, what I got to was I felt like at a certain point we had built a conveyor belt for comedy, really, because the movie does the story and we just have to do the funny part. So that made it much easier for me. So I hope that answers your question. Yeah. Let's give him a round of applause.
Good question.
Hey, Joel.
Hey, man.
On the mic.
Hey, Mike.
So you kind of touched on it a little bit just recently about Toho, and my question was going to be kind of going into the Godzilla and Camera series. You mentioned that kind of like how you did it backdoor, but how did the studios react once they started seeing those movies come out? Like you did Godzilla versus Gamera, or I'm sorry, Godzilla versus Megalon, and then you did a series of Gamera movies as well. How did, when they came around and they actually started seeing what you were doing with the movies, they were like, did they give you more to do, or?
No, I think it's a great question, by the way, and I think that the point when it all ground to a halt is I don't think they really understood I don't think there was any consciousness that they knew what we were doing until it was out as a DVD, that DVD box set. So, and back then DVDs were big money. That was like, when, it's kind of like broadcast, cable, then VHS, then DVDs, then, the internet, right? Or streaming, right? So those are kind of the little pockets where you could make money. But DVD was so big and it just came on their radar and they go, well, this is horrible. We don't want anybody making fun of our property, And so that's what happened. They just didn't, we couldn't talk them into thinking, hey, it's funny. Just doing it. So obviously we understand that they have to protect their property, right? So I think it'd be wrong for me to insist that someone would let me do that. I wouldn't if I were camera.
I got one more question for you, sir. On the flip side, did you ever do a movie and then, like for instance, like Toho or whoever, they saw it and they actually liked it, and then they gave you permission to do more?
Yeah, absolutely. I heard about the guy who produced is it Ghoulies? The Ghoulies one? And he went nuts after that and then wanted to deliberately put his movies in. But I kind of didn't want to do that because it's kind of like, it doesn't work that way. You can't deliberately make bad movies for Mystery Science. Kind of like a little too incestuous. So I always felt like the best way to do it is to have a movie that doesn't wink at the camera. Because once Mystery Science Theater happened, all these people making B movies go, we got it both ways. We're going to make a monster movie and we're going to make it funny and we're going to do what they do. But that's hard. So anyway, but But I can remember hearing about that guy getting all gung ho, like, I'm gonna start putting more of my bad movies in your show, and
Feels like it's forced a little bit.
it felt forced to me, yeah. So,
Appreciate it.
I don't know, I thought I'd make that funnier, but. Thank you. Great question.
Great question, give it down.
How you doing, sir? I'm one of the first people that were watching on Sci-Fi up at 2 a.m. in the morning. Enjoyed it. Oh, I'd never get sleep those days, but it was very, very appreciative.
Is there anything else you want to tell me about those times? Didn't sleep, maybe you got a little anxious, went into town,
It was my brother, he was in college, I would travel up there, we would hang out and we would do kind of our gaming thing early, and then at 2 a.m. we were still up and we were having a little bit of drinking and enjoying the break.
That's what I thought was coming. We were gonna start to have.
And then there was the hobo.
What's your name? Tell me your first name again.
Sean,
Hey, Sean.
Yeah.
Hi, Sean.
yeah, I'm
Oh,
the
doing
gentleman.
the AA thing.
Hi, Sean.
Yeah, I'm here, I'm an alcoholic.
No, go ahead, I'm sorry, man.
So it's probably a question you've already had plenty of times. I have two, so I'll make sure they're separate so you can.
No problem.
Basically, the first one was probably, I have an idea, but which is probably what you would consider one of the worst movies you ever did?
The worst movies we ever did?
Yeah, I have an idea. I think there was one called like the Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny or something along those lines.
Yeah,
It was
the
just-
Santa Claus one was amazing from, who's the, you guys remember the filmmaker who did Santa Claus? Brilliant, yeah.
I think it was out at like Tallahassee or something where they did the show.
Yeah, he was a producer out of Tallahassee, but it was made in Mexico. Yeah, that's right, yeah. I'm gapping on that guy's name, but he did like.
Quick to IMDb. Go for it.
If someone has a phone,
I don't know if we've got those.
then you'd have to be a nerd to want to do this. But does anyone want to look up who that filmmaker was? Who was the producer?
If my wife was here, she would be on top of it, I promise you, because that's how.
She's right.
She's right there. She's right there behind you. Come up here, wife. Do you know the name? That would be a no.
He did a lot of live action stuff, and that was all produced in Mexico. And he did like a version of Puss in Boots. It was very disturbing. He did a fair amount of these live action movies. Anybody getting that?
Yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah.
Also, we went into some theme park with. Yes, exactly. It went into some theme park with Thumbelina, and it was really weird.
Do we know the name of the filmmaker?
Renee Cardone.
Do you know who distributed it though? The distributor is the guy who took it and revoiced
Hey,
it.
Gordon Murphy.
Yeah,
Thank you.
K, was it K. Gordon Murray, right? K. Gordon Murray is the guy who is really responsible for that, because these movies were made in Mexico or South America. He was another, clever distributor, which is a lot of what people did, is they find movies. It still goes on today, right? You find a movie in another country, bring it across, maybe redub it. But K. Gordon Murray was the one who did all those, and they're outrageous and fantastic. But he did that Santa Claus movie, yeah.
So my second question is, in all the early episodes, you had all that fan mail. Do you still have that?
Do I still have the fan mail from 35 years ago? What do you think?
Maybe.
I have great big file cabinets. I spend my leisure. Those glorious days.
It's much like the end of Indiana Jones.
Yeah, that's a funny thing. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Sorry. No, I'm actually even downsizing now, so it's like I can't,
Well, I would imagine you were gonna need like some storage unit or storage capacity type thing, so I agree. It was more of a curiosity question. Thank you very much.
Just so you know too, we actually have a big storage unit now, and we're going to do an auction. So if you like Mystery Science Theater, it'll be available in about a year probably.
Good.
Yeah, great question, man.
Great question.
Henry, you can't do this. You're too young.
Okay.
Did I get your name right? Right?
Yes.
All right.
Oh, look at that.
I told him he had a good question, and I told him to come back and do it again. Yeah.
So I have two questions. First one, what was your favorite robot?
My favorite robot, I can't tell you because they're like my children. Do you have a brother or a sister?
No, I'm an only child, which is
All right.
pretty great.
It's got a
Do you
future.
think your parents have decided who their favorite is?
I probably should ask my dad.
Probably you, right? Because you're an only child, right?
Yeah.
Would it be awful if they named another kid? Like Ricky? Anyway, no, I don't answer that question, but it's Crow. I'm kidding, I can't do that. No, I care about them equally, and I like them both the same, or all three of them, or five of them that there are now.
So the second question is, this is a gamma related question. So, what was your favorite part about any gamma episode?
Oh, man, I like that one where Gamera's on, like, on a uneven, like, parallel bars. That's an amazing moment. Remember that one?
I don't think I've seen that.
Do you have a favorite one?
I think my favorite is possibly Gamma versus Jiger or Gamma versus Gauss.
Yeah, fantastic, right?
I think my favorite part is in Gamma versus Gauss, where you try to think up ways how to snuff Gauss.
Yeah, right. And is there a thing where they spray stuff in the air, like on cows, to try to like do something? Am I mixing it up?
With like they spin it with the blood cup?
Yeah, I can't remember. I get lost in all that stuff. You know, it's been 35 years.
The most known joke is like the planning joke that any.
You know, I gotta tell you something, Henry. I'm gonna be real with you. You know how many riffs are in a Mystery Science Theater?
No, I don't know.
Over 700. You know how many Mystery Science Theaters we made? Over 200. Wanna go away and do the math on that? When you expect me to remember a joke, it's impossible. I'm kidding you, man. Hey, I think Henry's a smart, nice kid. I think we give him a round of applause. Good job, man. And how are we doing on time?
We've got about 15 minutes.
15 minutes?
Yeah.
I'll keep it quick then. How are you, Joel?
Good. What's your name?
My name's Declan.
Hey, can you grab the microphone, put it real close to you? I'm having a hard time
I can
hearing.
do that.
Awesome.
How are you?
I'm good, man. I mean, look at me. Come on.
So my question, obviously the movies are the forefront of the show, but I wanted to get your thoughts more on the set design, because when I watched the show a lot growing up with my parents, and the set design was always something that stood out to me. It's just got such a unique vibe to it that you don't really see in anything else. So I was wondering if you had any sort of insight going into the original production of the show. What was the thought process that went into that?
Yeah, well, it's a very good question, and all that stuff is super important to me. People want to focus on the riffs in the movies, but obviously it's all those other things, designing the robots, designing the sets. How does it all work, right? And how do you do it visually and make it interesting and hold together? And so, obviously, Pee-wee's Playhouse was a big influence on me, and I think and Wayne White, who designed all the puppets for Mystery Science Theater, is a good friend of mine, and we do a show every year in January called Cheesecapades, Hodgson and White's Cheesecapades, and we have a band and we do songs together. He's a good friend of mine, but he was a huge influence on me. And I loved, the thing I loved the most about Pee-wee's Playhouse is you could kind of see the seams of how it was made, right? It was not a mystery. And often that's what you want, is this kind of untouchable world, right? That's perfectly put together. And so by showing the seams, it helped a lot. And that's what I wanted to do with MST is, and we just didn't have the money or the skill to do anything else, right? So it just was the best way. But the other piece of this too is to not have peaks and valleys of quality. That's when the viewer starts to turn off. And you'll notice that with anything you see on the internet or anything you see where you go, wow, this is really neat, and then boom, it bottoms out and there's something that doesn't quite work, or there's a big peak in quality that's really exciting, but then they can't maintain it. And so I was really interested in kind of making a world where we could manage it and do it. So if you look at KTMA, that's kind of the first blush, but we did it so fast. I mean, we did that opening in a couple of days, and I built all of that stuff, the doorway thing, and the actual set piece. I did. Jim and Kevin physically made the thing, and then Jim brought it over in the KTMA van, and I put all the surface action on it and painted it. And then I had this design for the doorway sequence, and Kevin made that, and then I did the surface action on it. And so those were kind of the beginnings of it, just to get it on its feet, kind of, because there's just no money. But each iteration, right, as we got the first season, we didn't have time, we couldn't finish the set. And so the second season was how the set was supposed to look. We just couldn't get it together because we never kept going. All I had ever done was produce my stand-up act, and Jim Allen and Kevin had just done kind of live action things. And so we really worked together to do that. And of course, Trace Ballou is a big part of that as well, he was the one basically I said, well, look, it's like Silent Running, right? You know, the Bruce Dern movie, the Douglas Trumbull movie, where it's a guy with robots, and we were looking at it and saying, oh yeah, you use geodesic domes to make the ships in Silent Running. So next thing I know, Trace comes in with the new satellite love shaped like a bone. And it was brilliant, right? So that was based on us looking at Douglas Trumbull and saying, hey, geodesic domes, we love Buckminster Fuller, and thought, oh, this is such a cool way to go. And so he extrapolated that from, if you look at the ships on Silent Running, they're geodesic domes, and you just kind of pieced them together and made a big bone. So, and Trace was very important to that stuff too, because he went ahead and then basically said, oh, let's make the set out of a geodesic dome. And that way, he cracked the code on how to do that. And we basically bought a kit, because you can do geodesic dome kits. So we bought a kit after the kit built that. So thanks for asking, but then, each time we get to iterate it a little better, like going to finally ending up on Netflix, and then kind of having the money and the interest to kind of do that version of it, because God, I just ran into Emo Phillips. You guys know who Emo Phillips is? Yeah. He's brilliant. He's wonderful, but we're in LA, and our friends had a movie that came out. It's a wonderful movie by a group called Two-Headed Dog called The Big Whoop. It's really amazing. And he's there, and he's just like looking at me, and he goes, no, you screwed the pooch, man. You didn't do it like you did it back at Comedy Central. It didn't look right. And I go, dude, that would be really weird if we tried to make it look shitty like that. You can't do that. You have to kind of progress and go, no, we're going to make it look a little nicer for Netflix. We're going to make this a little better. So he wanted that nostalgia there. But anyway, it was kind of funny. Only Emo would come up and go, you suck.
That was always the charm of it. I remember watching it and seeing, when the little TV screen doesn't really close quite right, or doing the movie sign doors and one of them kind of gets stuck, so you can see someone pulls it. that, growing up, that kind of helped me first kind of understand how like set design and stuff work. So I just want to thank you. It's a really cool.
Yeah, thanks for asking. Great question. Let's give him a round of applause. You want to keep an eye on the time?
Yeah, I'm keeping an eye on that. We've got time for about 2 more questions. So sorry. So that's where we're at. We're about 5 minutes left.
Hi, I'm Jeff.
Hey, Jeff.
I want to start out by a very quick thank you. What you helped create, just speaking from my own personal experience, not only created some of my fondest early memories and stuff, but is still able, through the advent of the internet or my mom's old tapes, she's right there, she still have all the old.
Hi, Mom.
They were circulated as requested. It has been able to keep me company in times of greatness and lowness and stuff. And I just appreciate you going forward with that idea.
Of course, man. Happy to do it.
And my question is, although anyone who helps create anything will think, well, no, I didn't start. There's a whole bunch of stuff that inspired me and everything. But with the advent not only the show continuing in some capacity, but the fact that the most popular form of entertainment on the internet right now are people playing video games and talking over them and making jokes during them and stuff. And if you ask those people, if they go back to the earliest people who did that, they talk about Mystery Science Theater 3000. And there's a whole level of effectively meta commentary that continues to exist through all of entertainment now that people cite back with your creation, that there's like this Midwestern source for appreciating art that doesn't have an earlier point than you. And I was just wondering if you'd ever considered that or not.
Well, thank you very much. And I'm going to end with that because that's a fantastic compliment. No, I'm kidding. But no,
It was fun. That guy helps.
thank you so much for saying that. And there are critics that have mentioned that before. I really appreciate that. And I think it is probably that, I mean, from my perspective, it's the first time that, I don't know, I want to be really careful how I say this, but it was the first time it was so hard for people to understand what I was trying to describe because it didn't make sense. And in fact, when we first did it at TV 23, there's a woman who called in and thought she was losing her mind. She thought her TV had blended 2 TV shows together. And to answer, just to give you a little bit of a clue of how I got to that is, and I've said this story before, but in a lot of a fair amount of us adults are around the same age, and so you might remember this, but there's a great record, Elton John's Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. And there's a little drawing of theater seats and 2 people watching a Clark Gable movie. And in high school, I saw that and I go, now that'll be a great TV show if someone were to do that, sit there. So I actually kind of came up with it in high school, but nobody's giving development deals to kids in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Go Pack, right? But anyway, thank you. That's a wonderful question. And thank you for the very nice observation and the good word. I appreciate it. Now, thank you. Let's give a round of applause. Give that one. It's a really special one because this is going to be a super funny question and answer because I got to close the show.
No pressure.
So what you got?
Well, it's not nearly as good as that question.
Wait a minute. Let me be the judge of that.
Well, I had a question of 2 films. Have you ever heard of a short film called Boo?
You trying to scare me?
Well, it's 1932. Universal, they took
complete nerve authority.